That's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, let's bring in Donald Trump, who joins us from Indianapolis. So, am I making any mistakes in my talking points, Mr. Trump?
Well, I don't know why you're so surprised. I mean, you know, we've been doing well. I've done well my whole life. I've had victories my whole life. So we're going to have another victory. We have thousands of people. We're in Indiana. We have thousands of people behind me. You probably hear. It's been amazing. And last night was so incredible in New York.
All right, but you got to step back, and you have to, and I know you are. I mean, you know, this is what you have accomplished here. Has never really been done before in this country. I mean, you, a political outsider with no legislative experience, wipe out 17 experienced, most of them politicians, Ben Carson the exception, wipe them out. And you're saying that I shouldn't be surprised and the folks shouldn't be surprised? Come on, you're surprised.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm surprised, Bill. You know, it's about jobs, it's about the economy, it's about a strong military, it's about the border.
You aren't surprised that you're going to be the nominee? When you started out, I know you're a confident guy, I know that. But you must have said, you know, this is kind of a long shot, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I believe in myself.
Well, you know, my message is make America great again. I think it's been a great message from the beginning. From the moment I announced on June 16th, it was, you know, pretty well accepted. And right after that, shortly, a few weeks after that, we went to #1, and I've stayed there for that entire period of time up until now. We've been center stage on every debate, as you know. Center, you know, meaning like #1 at every debate. And I don't know, but I've loved the process. I love the people. I've seen so many people, so many millions of people, and this country is great. We have such potential, Bill, and we're not using it. With that being said, you know, my opponents, as you know because you reported it, I've had 55,000 negative ads. 55,000 negative ads. And I won Florida after...
Yeah, they don't care. Your supporters don't care.
I won everything.
They don't care.
Yeah,
what you've managed to do is inoculate yourself to all of that negativity by being a unique presence in the political arena. I mean, look, whether you like Trump or not, and I'm talking to the audience, not you, just don't have to listen to this, okay, Don? You don't have to listen. I'm just going to talk to the audience directly. Whether you like this guy or not, whether you like him or not, what he's done is unique. It's never been done before. He spoke directly to the people. He went around the establishment. He went around the press. He didn't take money from the fat cats, and he won. It's never been done. All right, now I'm back to you. That being said, you got more work. You're at 65% of Americans. You know, they're not in your wheelhouse. What are you going to do?
Well, I do understand that, and I think now, you know, it's been a very tough battle. We had, as you said, 17 people, and I was being hit from every angle and every side, and I had to be very tough coming back. I mean, there's no question about that. I had to be very, very tough, and in some cases, I had to be very nasty, and now it looks like we're in very good shape to go, you know, right to the end, and then I'll take on, as I say, crooked Hillary. Hillary is crooked, and I'll call her crooked Hillary, but I'll take on Hillary Clinton, and I think we're going to win.
Okay.
No, I think
now,
we're going to win.
last night, you shocked the world by calling Ted Cruz senator rather than the usual Lion Ted. Was that a signal that you are the kinder, gentler Trump now?
Well, I don't think so necessarily. I thought it would be very undignified for me to get up at that particular moment with all of the people and you know, pretty much the world watching last night, because everybody wanted to see what was going to happen in the great state of New York, a state where I think I'll beat Hillary Clinton, by the way, but what was going to happen. And even I didn't know it was going to be that, you know, it's close to 62%, and even I didn't know it was going to be to that level. We got almost all of the delegates, almost 100% of the delegates. It's going to be very close.
Yeah, I think you lost 3 to Kasich.
You know,
I think that's the final tally.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of them.
But you were not bombastic last night. You were happy, very complimentary to your home state,
sure.
And it was a little bit of a different thing. And now, as I said, they can't stop you, they being Mitch McConnell and the Republican establishment. They can't. They can't. In my opinion, and I've looked at every scenario, There's nothing, unless you get whacked in California, and the field poll says that you're running okay there. Unless you get wiped out there, you're in. You're the guy.
Yeah, we're doing very well in California. We have a tremendous lead, and I have a tremendous relationship with that state. I employ many people there, and you know, I really had a great relationship with California. And we're going out there in a few weeks, and you know, I think we'll do very well there. But I have to say that I don't know why the Republican Party, in terms of its leaders, I like Mitch and I like Paul Ryan, and I don't know why they, you know, turn away the millions and millions of voters that came. You know, they call it the Trump train. I don't call it the Trump train because it's, you know, but
I'll tell you why. You want to know why? Do you want to know?
Go ahead.
They don't think that you're going to beat her, Hillary Clinton, and they think they're going to lose the Senate and the House in the process. They think it's going to be a Goldwater 1964 run. That's what they think. Now, what they base that on, I don't know. I mean, but that's what they think.
Yeah. A lot of people think I will beat her. A lot of people think I'll put states into play that will never be in play. Like, I'll win Michigan. No other Republican is going to even compete in Michigan. I'll win Pennsylvania. I'll win states that nobody else. And guess what? I'm going to win New York. I mean,
if you win New York, you're going to be president.
Yesterday.
If you win New York, you're going to be president.
But I will win New York because I'm going to produce. Bill, I'm going to produce jobs. I look at New York State. It's a disaster. The jobs are all gone. I mean, they're moving to Mexico. They're moving all over the world.
Certainly upstate.
And New York State is just no. Right. And I will tell you, I think I'll win New York. And
all right.
That would be a pretty big thing.
Can you hang in just for a couple of minutes? I want to talk to you about Hillary Clinton, and I'm sure you're thinking about this. How you're going to go and compete one-on-one with her. And we appreciate your time. We know you're running around the country today. Continuing now with our lead story, Donald Trump very close to securing the Republican nomination for president. So we got a taste of how you might campaign against Hillary Clinton in Poughkeepsie, New York, last Sunday.
And then, of course, we have Crooked Hillary. Crooked Hillary, folks. She's been crooked from the beginning, and to think that she has a shot at being our president, crooked Hillary Clinton. We can't let it happen. You can't let it happen.
All right, so that's the theme, crooked Hillary Clinton. You can't let it happen. Are you going to get at it on a hat?
Well, it's not a theme, Bill. It's a nickname that I use. I like to sort of brand people and brand them honestly. And I branded some of the people that I've been against on the Republican side. I think it's been effective. And, you know, that's what I brand her. I mean, you know the story as well as anybody else. Got a lot of problems.
Okay, so it's not going to be the kinder, gentler Donald Trump in the one-on-one race. Do you believe that when you go after Hillary Clinton, and let me ask you this, you know, the Clintons have had some personal situations based on the president's conduct in the White House. Are you going to dredge all that up? Is that going to become forefront?
I hope not. I don't look to. I certainly would like to keep that out if possible. You just don't know what's going to happen, but I would like to be able to keep that out if possible.
All right, so if they don't come after you personally, you're not going to come after them personally? Can we get that on the record tonight?
I would say that. But, you know, when you say I'll be tough with her, she's going to be, and they are going to be very tough with me. You know, I've been reading, they're doing all sorts of research and everything else. What's there to find? People have known me for a long time. But they're going into all sorts of different things. And, you know, I am what I am, and I've done well. I built a great, great company. I filed my papers for the great company. Everybody can see it. I built an amazing company. And, frankly, with some of the great assets of the world, very little leverage, very little debt, tremendous cash flow, some of the great assets of the world, Bill. And, you know, I'm very proud of it. Over $10 billion in net worth.
You're going to get vetted, but so will she. But here's what's likely to happen.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, here's what's likely to happen.
She's got some nasty pieces of work on her payroll. And they don't work directly for her. They work for the PACs, the political action committees. These are the worst, these guys. I'm not going to mention their names. I don't want to empower them. You know who they are, all right?
I know their names.
They're going to do it. They're going to come after you.
I've known them for 20 years, Bill.
Right.
Sure.
So when they come after you, leaking stuff to a Huffington Post or a left-wing website or even a legitimate paper, okay, when they do that, are you going to then come back in kind and drag up all Lewinsky stuff?
There will be retaliation unless it's fair. If it's fair, I would never do that. But there will be retaliation, as there should be, unless it's fair. Now, if they treat me fairly, I'm going to treat them
they're not going to treat you fairly, and you're not going to treat them fairly.
We'll find out.
She said last night that you're dangerous. You're a dangerous man. That seems to be the theme. Your theme is that she's corrupt. Her theme is you're dangerous. That seems to me where it's going right now. Now, that's not fair. You don't think you're dangerous, do you?
No, I don't. I think that I'm going to put the country back to work again.
All right, but is that enough to set you off?
Strong.
When she goes off and says Donald Trump is dangerous and he's denigrating women and he's doing all things to minorities and he doesn't like Muslims, it's dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. Is that enough to set you back where you go after her personally?
Well, they would be lies. I mean, if they said those things, they would be lies because that's not true, and I think you understand that. So maybe it would be. I will have to see. I watched Bernie, and Bernie got angrier and angrier as this campaign went by. I see him winning all these different states. You know, it's a corrupt system. You understand that
I got it. But Bernie didn't lay her out.
All of this, and
Bernie stayed away from all of the email stuff.
He got nasty.
He was hitting her on the donations, but Bernie gave her a pass on 90% of the other historical stuff. And I just see this.
He made a big mistake by not doing emails. He made a big mistake in not really going after her. When he did that little soundbite, basically saying forget the emails, that was a big mistake, and he wish he had that to do over again.
You're not going to forget the emails.
Right now.
You're not going to forget the emails. All right, last question.
Well, I think the emails, I don't think that's playing dirty pool. I think the emails are a big part of her life story right now.
It depends what the FBI. Depends what the FBI comes back.
And we're going to see what happens.
Are you going to see what happens? You want to make a prediction tonight? Do you think Hillary Clinton will be indicted?
No, because I think the Democrat Party is going to protect her. I don't think she's going to be indicted. I think that what she's done is very, very serious. I know for a fact that what General Petraeus and others have done was much less, and it destroyed their lives. So I do believe, Bill, that she's being protected.
But how can the Democratic Party? How can the Democratic Party protect her from the FBI? Isn't the FBI non-corruptible?
Well, I hope they're not working together. You know, they are humans and they are people and they do talk, I would imagine. And I would like to think that they don't work together, but I would say that she's being protected. Now, what she can't be protected from is the statute of limitations, because on the assumption that somebody else got in, that's a real dangerous situation. I mean, in a certain way, she may be fighting for her life.
So if you were elected, then you would go back in and take a look at it.
Well, you have a 6-year statute of limitations,
right,
and certainly this falls within that period of time, and you'd certainly have to look at it very fairly. I would only do something that was 100% fair, but certainly that is something you would look at.
Mr. Trump, thank you very much for your time this evening. We know how busy you are, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Bill.
Directly ahead, does Bernie Sanders know he is done? Ed Henry will answer that question. Later, Miller on Dancing Trump Kids. Why did they get in trouble?
And it is 9 p.m. here on the East Coast. Welcome to the Kelly Files special coverage of the New York primaries. My friend Brett is here with me as polls officially close across the state tonight. And Fox News can now project that New York businessman Donald Trump will win the Empire State's Republican presidential primary based on Fox exit polls. How big is Trump's victory? He may end up exceeding 50% of the vote here, which would be a first for him in any state. Ohio Governor John Kasich is currently well ahead of Texas Senator Ted Cruz in the race for second place, but it is too early to say who will take the silver and who will take the bronze on that side.
It is also too early to say whether former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will beat Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. That's big news. Fox exit polls currently show a tight race between Clinton, who you may remember represented New York for 8 years in the U.S. Senate, and Sanders, who was born and raised in Brooklyn. This is a huge story tonight. Obviously, Donald Trump and the margin margin of victory that he will have here is a big story. But if it's 5 points, if it's less than 5 points, I know it's all about the math, but that's significant.
You're talking about the Dem side.
Yeah.
On the Dem side, exactly right, because she was supposed to blow him out and was beating him significantly before, but he's tightened it. And even though mathematically he needs to win here in order to really challenge her on the numbers, there's a question about psychologically what this does and how the Democratic race will shape up thereafter. I want to bring back our panel. Dana Perino, Julie Roginski, Tucker Carlson, and Dana Lash is here as well. She's the host of Dana on the Blaze TV. Dana Lash, let me start with you since we haven't heard from you yet. So Ted Cruz poised to come in third, not yet official. It's not good for him. And one thing we're seeing from the exit polls is there were three little words that hurt him here badly: New York values. Too short-sighted?
No, I don't think so. I mean, when he was talking about New York values, I mean, he's talking about the New York progressive values that are ruining an awesome city. And I mean, that's at least what I got. Of course, I come from the Midwest, where I'm always told that I come from a cow town, and everyone questions whether I and everybody else shares, genes, shares DNA. That being said, though, I don't think that the Cruz campaign they weren't anticipating that he was going to come in first. I mean, it's Donald Trump's home state. Of course, he's going to come in first place in New York, and I would expect John Kasich to do incredibly well, if not beat Ted Cruz in the state of New York, because he's more of a moderate. And New Yorkers, even though you can have Republican New Yorkers, they tend to kind of go for maybe more moderate Republicans. That's not anything to be, upset about. That's just to be expected. Nobody was freaking out when Ted Cruz was first place in Texas and Donald Trump wasn't. That just kind of goes with the territory of it being your home state.
Dana Perino, in this case, if John Kasich finishes well ahead of Ted Cruz, as we are seeing it right now, does he have a heartbeat, even though mathematically he has no way to get to 1237 other than a second or third ballot at the convention?
He certainly has a stronger argument than he's had in the last few weeks, as everyone's been telling him that he should drop out. If he's able to do that, and you look at the demographics of New York, and you look at the New England states that are going to vote next Tuesday on April 26th, I think John Kasich would be able to say, not only have I won in those states, or at least come in second, but you look at all the polls that we have, and I'm the only one who can beat Hillary Clinton in a head-to-head matchup. So take another look at me. I don't think he has a real reason to drop out, especially if he comes in second tonight.
He's only won Ohio. He came in second in New Hampshire. He may come in second tonight.
Right. And he could probably do well next week. I understand the calls. In fact, even Mitt Romney today seemed to indicate that Cruz or Kasich should get out, and it seemed to me that he was signaling that Kasich should be the one to get out. But I think Kasich has a case to make that if no one gets to 1237, why not stay and try to win and try to lead the Republican Party? He'll say, you have to win Ohio. I won Ohio. I turned that state around. The thing I think that's really hard for him is that across the board, in every one of these contests, we've seen that the majority of people want an outsider. That is true tonight in New York, and it'll be true probably next week. So he's not going to beat Donald Trump next week, but could he come in second over Cruz? Probably.
Tucker, how significant is this victory for Donald Trump? Because I think in the last 14 polls on the Real Clear Politics average of all polls, he's been winning. However, he suffered a defeat in Wisconsin. The campaign had a few missteps, and now, I mean, he appears to have come roaring back in his home state. It looks like he's not winning it by a little. It looks like he's winning it by a lot, and going into a field of states that looks very good for him.
I mean, I think had a few missteps, maybe one of the most profound understatements I've heard in a while. It's been a total, flagrant, flaming disaster for the last month.
Tell us how you really feel.
Well, it's true, and I'm not saying this one is hostile. This is an observer, and yet he just won. It looks like by a majority, one of the most significant states there is. This is, home to a lot of America's economy. This is a serious state. It's one of the biggest states, and he just won it overwhelmingly. What does this tell us? That he's a great campaigner? That he's run a brilliant campaign? No, of course not. It tells us that he's doing things, saying things that people wanted to hear. He is doing what the establishment on the Republican side and the Democratic side, you can say this about Bernie as well, should have been doing. He is a referendum on them, and they have come up far short. So the question really is, how will the parties adjust in the next 3 or 4 cycles to prevent something like this from happening again? You can't just say, we're going to make John Kasich the nominee and just forget this ever happened. That's not going to work. You need to change, and are they going to? Are they ready to do that?
Julie, the Trump campaign, I think, is acknowledging that they had to change. They have new leadership now. There's a shift in the interior workings of that campaign as they hunt for delegates around the country. Trump will probably say tonight, the people who know me best elected me most. because it will be the highest margin likely. The next highest was Massachusetts. Will that be compelling for the rest of the Republican Party?
You know, I think it is a compelling message. It's certainly his right to say it, and he'll be right about it. But ultimately, look, Donald Trump, again, the math is irrevocable. He has to get to 1237. If he doesn't get to 1237, to Tucker's point, does the establishment get together? Does the establishment say, look, we will live with Ted Cruz, who a year ago we all loathed and despised, but in order to save what is left of us and of our power, are we going to deliver this nomination to Ted Cruz on the second ballot and the 10th ballot and the 15th ballot in order to prevent a Trump candidacy? And at that point, does the Republican Party just splinter apart? Because you have voters, like in New York tonight and all over the country, who will deliver a plurality to Donald Trump, but then will potentially see the nomination taken away from him by these so-called party bosses. That is something the Republican Party, and Reince Priebus, God bless him, has got the worst job in America, something that he's got to be worried about more than anybody else.
It seems like the Republicans are ticked off that the so-called establishment, they don't have party bosses. The Democrats have party bosses. They built them into the system, the superdelegates, right? The Republicans are like, Reince is like, is it me? Mitch McConnell is like, is it me? Okay, all right, anyway.
I mean, there are establishment people in Washington who really would love that superdelegate system, but they don't have it now. So
anything could happen in 2020.
There you go. So how does the delegate math work out for Republicans? Let's head back to Bill Hemmer for that at the Billboard. Bill, what about it?
So we have crunched the numbers, Brett, among all the states that still remain, and we've cross-referenced all the political websites. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take New York out of the equation because we do not know how the delegates will divide tonight. So a week from now, Trump starts at 756, right? He needs to get to 1237. We think he's going to do really well in Rhode Island, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania. Now we're in the month of May. There is very little information out of Indiana. We do not know which way the Hoosier state will go at the moment. We stand by what we said a week ago. We think it favors Cruz. Could change. We'll see. Then you move to Nebraska. We think that favors Cruz. The same day we think West Virginia favors Trump. Now we're in the third week of May. We think Oregon goes for Trump slightly. Washington State goes for Cruz slightly. And again, all this can change as we move through. Now we're at June 7th. We think winner take all Montana and South Dakota both go for Cruz. We think New Mexico is too close to call, 50-50 split. So now we are in California. And as we said a week ago and a week prior to that, we think Trump can get 100 delegates in the state of California, which takes him to 1,029. The same day New Jersey winner take all, we believe that goes to Trump as well. So he's 157 shy of this number of 1237. If he were to get 80 delegates tonight from the state of New York, which is entirely possible, you cut this number in half and you're down to around 80 delegates after the 7th of June in California goes. At that point, Brett, you would have about 170 unbound Republican delegates who would go to Cleveland, Ohio for the convention. And that's where the game will be played between June 8th and July 18th for those 170 if this scenario plays out. But again, check back in a week. It could all change, right? That's why we watch. Brett and Megan, back to you.
Thanks, Bill. The art of the deal, that time frame, that is whether he could get those additional delegates, and that may make the difference.
Absolutely right. So Martha McCallum's been looking at the exit polls for us and what New Yorkers had to say after casting their vote. She has that for us now. Hey, Martha.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Good evening to you. So how Donald Trump won? New York voters want to shake things up, and they want to do that big time. Look at these numbers. Those who want an outsider, Trump clobbered the competition on this. He got 85% of the outsider vote. That's something he has split in the past in some places with Ted Cruz. Kasich got 6%, as you can see. They are also angry with the federal government. They want change there. He dominates with this group as well, 72% on that measure. And we all remember when Donald Trump declared himself a candidate. There's a few blocks from here in the summer. He talked about immigration. He got in a lot of hot water for the way he talked about it, but that issue is still very strong with the voters in New York State. And like GOP voters in all the contests so far, here nearly 7 in 10 are concerned about the safety of letting in refugees from the war zone. They want to see that temporary ban that Donald Trump talked about on Muslims entering the United States in big numbers, and they went for him as well. He wins there, clearly. So Trump also carried some groups that he doesn't usually win with tonight. He actually did better among high-income voters. That's a switch for him. He got 61% of those earning more than $100,000, yet only 50% of those earning less than $50,000. Those are groups he's been real strong with in the past. So despite his strong win here in New York, however, the Republican Party, from these numbers and everything we're seeing, remains very divided, as you all were just talking about. 60% of GOP voters say that the Republican campaign this year has divided the party. Only 36% say that this race and all that has come with it has energized their party. The numbers are really much different than that on the Democratic side. They seem to be very happy with how things are going, and they feel like it's energizing their party. So take a look at this. This is strong as well. If Trump is the nominee, and this is among New York GOP voters, a quarter of them say that they would not vote for him if he becomes the nominee. For Ted Cruz, that number is 40% are dead set against him if he's the nominee. Even Kasich, who many think appeals to, a broad, moderate voter, the classic college-educated, moderate, high-income New York Republican, 3 in 10, 30% say that if he becomes the nominee, they will not vote for John Kasich. So some very strong feelings are out there, and we're getting a very good feel for them in these exit polls tonight. We'll have some more for you as we go through the evening. Back to you guys.
Arthur, thank you.
One important thing before we go to the campaign cowboys, the Democratic race is tight. Too early to call right now. We're getting some raw vote totals coming in quickly, but it's tight. And remember the breaking news at the beginning. Ed Henry saying 125,000 people may have been left off the rolls, an investigation ongoing. That could factor in as we get more and more into this night.
They're saying entire city blocks had their registration wiped out. So these people show up to vote in Brooklyn. And keep in mind, New Yorkers are not used to being relevant in the presidential campaign at all. I mean, we don't, or ever waiting. We don't wait. It's like you walk too slow on the sidewalk, you could be in real trouble. It's the one thing that will really irritate people. So now they're being told, well, you could fill out a provisional ballot. You could sign this affidavit. Can you imagine what's going on in Brooklyn as these people hear that?
That's a lot of people. So keep that in mind as we go through the night. Let's bring in our campaign cowboys. Chris Wallace, anchor of Fox News Sunday. Joe Trippi was Howard Dean's campaign manager, and Karl Rove was deputy chief of staff to President George W. Bush. Both are Fox News contributors. Easy for you to say.
I enjoyed that.
Chris, take it away.
Thank you so much, Brett. Well, as we've been saying, it's a big night for Donald Trump. He's going to get 55% of the vote, and that means he'll get, if he does get more than 50% of the vote, he'll get all 14 of the at-large delegates. But then there are, in effect, separate elections in each of the 27 congressional districts, and that's what I want to drill down into right now with you, Karl Rove, because all of these congressional districts, particularly when you're talking about Republican voters, are not created equal, right?
That's right. Not all districts have the same number of Republicans. Let's take a look at some districts. Congressional District 27, which is in the far western part of the state, Buffalo, represented by Congressman Collins, the first member of the House to endorse Donald Trump, has 177,013 registered Republicans. Remember, this is a closed primary, so you have to be a registered Republican in order to participate. Next up, CD 21, the northern part of the state, the tallest part of the state, Elise Stefanik, 165,000. On the other hand, take a look at these two districts. Congressional District 15 in the Bronx, Democrat Jose Serrano represents this district. There are 13,270 Republicans, and they get just as many delegates, 3 delegates, as each of these two districts up here get. Charlie Rangel's district in Harlem, 16,307 registered Republicans. They get 3 districts. Now, what we've got here is that in these areas, the Ted Cruz campaign, which has an expertise in a ground game and a get-out-the-vote effort, has probably, as they've suggested, they've worked these hard with phone banks, mail, personal visits where possible, in order to get the same number of delegates.
Carlin, I want to make the point, exactly, that the districts with 170,000 Republican voters and the districts with 13,000 Republican voters, they each have 3 delegates to the convention. So basically, a voter in the Bronx has 10 times the voting power of one upstate. Now, just real quickly, because I want to move on to the Democrats, and Joe, what's a good night for Donald Trump? In other words, there are 95 delegates. Is it 60 that's the sort of tipping point for him? Is it 80? What does he need to get out of New York?
60 would be a bad night. I think if he gets 85, it's a really good night for him. If it's 80, it's a good night. Remember, the rules are if you get more than 50% in a congressional district, you get all 3 delegates. If you get less than 50% and somebody else gets more than 20, then you get 2 and they get 1.
Let me bring in Joe Trippi. You were going to say, first of all, you're surprised that it's a close race, and what county are you going to be looking at on the Democratic side?
Well, we'll be looking at Orange County is what I want to look at. It's a county that's been a swing in the past. In 2004, it went for George Bush with 54% of the vote. Went to Obama with 52% of the vote. This year, it went 57. I'm really looking at it because last time around it went 57-40 for Clinton. What's it going to do with Sanders and her this time? If Sanders closer than that, it could be say that he's going to do better in swing areas than we thought.
So, although it looks like a sweeping victory for Donald Trump and a very close race on the Democratic side, the Cowboys over the course of the night will be digging into those numbers to see how Trump does in all of those congressional districts, big and large, and Joe trying to figure out who's going to win on the Democratic side.
Chris, thank you.
By the way, it's Buffalo, not Buffalo. I just wanted to make that clear. We have a projection. Fox News can now project that Ohio Governor John Kasich will place second in New York's Republican presidential primary, leaving Texas Senator Ted Cruz to finish third based on exit polls and some early vote tallies. Fox has already declared, of course, Donald Trump the winner in New York. So that's a big second-place finish for the governor of Ohio.
And 2 questions remain tonight. By what margin does Donald Trump win the state, and what the heck is happening on the Democratic side? Stand by for that.
That does it for me. I'll be back at 11 p.m. Eastern.
Our Kelly File continues right after the break when Britt Hume joins us next. Back, everybody. Breaking tonight, a big night for the Republican frontrunner Donald Trump as we await Mr. Trump's victory speech live from Trump Tower in New York City on 5th Avenue tonight. We'll keep our eyes posted there and bring you there just as soon as he begins. This is Fox News projects that Trump has won his home state of New York. We are still, meantime, awaiting results over on the Democratic side. Welcome back to the Kelly File. And we just projected that John Kasich will come in second. Here in New York, Ted Cruz will come in third. Now, Fox News was able to project a Trump victory just moments after the polls closed, but the big question remains, how much will he win by? And it is an important question for him. Mr. Trump needs a strong showing tonight as he looks to secure this nomination outright and prevent a contested convention in July. In recent weeks, he has been engaged in a delegate-by-delegate battle with Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who has largely outmaneuvered the businessman to secure delegates in the race to shore up delegate support on a hypothetical second ballot at the convention. See, these delegates need to be wooed because if nobody gets to 1237 outright, then it goes to a second vote, and then a lot of these delegates free up, and if they've been wooed properly, they can abandon their candidate that the voters have told them to vote for and just vote their conscience. As a result, Mr. Trump has significantly shaken up his campaign staff, and he's brought in campaign veterans who know this delegate process inside and out. Joining me now with his thoughts, Britt Hume, our Fox News senior political analyst. Britt, good to see you. Your thoughts on what we've seen so far
Hi,
tonight?
Megan. Well, a big night for Trump, obviously, and this does ease his path toward winning this nomination outright, but it certainly doesn't guarantee it. The Trump win was expected, so I don't know how much effect it'll have on his momentum. Certainly he will claim momentum from this. A couple of noteworthy things. One is that Trump seems, according to the exit polls, to be doing the least well in the place where he's known the best. That is to say, New York City, and doing much better everywhere else. You might expect that urban areas are less friendly to Republicans generally and to conservatives than outlying areas, but nonetheless that might tell us something about his ability, were he the nominee, to cut into the Democratic Party's expected margins in urban areas all over the country. It obviously would be very meaningful if he was doing really well in New York City, but apparently not. But it's an expected win and a big win for him. And guess what, Megan? we might have news tonight. John Kasich might get a delegate or two. That's the first time that will have happened since when? Ohio? He might even close the gap between him and Marco Rubio, who quit after Florida but is still ahead of him.
Right. Well, there's a real question about whether that could matter, because every delegate counts at this point, and the question is whether, even if Trump can't secure this thing outright by June 7th when the voting stops, whether he will be close enough, and every delegate matters, whether he will be close enough to A, make the case to the American people that it would be grossly unfair to give it to somebody else, or B, make the case to somebody like John Kasich that he should come over to Trump's side, release his delegates, and help put him over the top, or at least make that case to unbound delegates that it's time to get on the Trump train.
Well, one presumes, Megan, that by the time we get to the convention, if Donald Trump does not have the requisite 1,237, he and his delegate hunting operation, which I guess is just really getting started now under Paul Manafort, who seems to have taken charge of much of the campaign, one would presume that they would be working the other candidates who are still in the race or still holding delegates, which could include Marco Rubio, to try to get them to do just what you described. Go ahead and endorse him, back him, and so on. That may be what Kasich's waiting for, or Kasich might be waiting for some kind of bizarre and almost unheard of lightning to strike that hasn't really happened in half a century and more. So and Kasich is, he's kind of mysterious about it when you ask him, what are you still doing here, buddy? You don't seem to be gaining much ground, but he keeps talking about how people are going to want me because I'm doing better in the polls.
And how fun a contested convention would be, which may be true for members of the media. I don't know how fun it's going to be for the Republican Party.
Well, if something happened, Megan, at the Republican convention this summer that's like what happened to the Democrats in 1924, I can guarantee you it wouldn't be any fun for anybody, least of all us who had to cover it. That, you may recall, that convention went to 103 ballots, but for it nominated a man from West Virginia who ended up losing to Calvin Coolidge. So we may want to hope is a story for a contested convention, but let's hope it's not something like that.
I got to ask for your thoughts on what's happening on the Democratic side. Hillary Clinton was ahead double digits in all the polls, virtually all the polls leading up to today. And now it is too close to call. The numbers are putting it within about 4 points. Now it's still, it's 9:26 here. They're still counting. But your thoughts on how tight that race is?
Well, if this turned out to be kind of a squeaker for her after the polling suggested otherwise for so long, I think that would be harmful to her in this sense. I mean, she's still, by virtue of the fact that she has a pledged delegate lead and a superdelegate lead that seems prohibitive at this stage. But what would happen if the superdelegates thought, this candidate is really weak, we got to go in another direction? Would they be willing at that point to think about Bernie Sanders, who is an unusual candidate, to say the least, being kind of an out-and-out, socialist, and a man well up in years who, I think is looked at as nowhere near a mainstream candidate. But it would certainly, I would think, raise doubts about Secretary Clinton and her staying power.
And if we hear more about Brooklyn and disenfranchised voters whose registration was purged and were forced to fill out provisional ballots, which no one wants to do. I mean, just the New Yorkers have no patience for this kind of thing, but maybe they're doing it. This story is not likely to leave us if this vote winds up tight. Britt, thank you.
Okay, Megan, thank you.
So again, we expect to hear from Donald Trump in just moments. We're told 9:30, so now we're a couple of minutes away from that. Plus, we were just mentioning the war over Republican delegates, which is now so fierce that both the Trump campaign and the RNC chair were in the Capitol today talking to GOP leaders. Ben Domenech and Monica Crowley are next on what happened there. Don't go away. We'll bring you the Trump speech.
So what Reince was doing was basically walking the members through how a convention is organized, what are the convention standing committees, how those committees are selected.
Awaiting remarks from Donald Trump as Fox News projects that Trump has won his home state of New York in the Republican primary here and may have a very good night picking up lots of delegates. We're waiting to see what the victory margin is. There's also new fallout regarding two competing meetings in New York today. Hold on a second. It appears that Mr. Trump is coming out. We were told it would be 9:30, and here it is, 9:30. He'll be coming out to give his victory speech in what appears to be, this will be the first state by which he's won more than 50%, it looks. And now the question is by how many delegates. Trump himself saying he would like to get about 80 tonight. Karl Rove suggesting 85 or more would make this a very good night for the Trump campaign. And as you heard moments ago, every single delegate now counts in this race. We could actually end this thing on June 7th with perhaps Donald Trump with 1237 outright, perhaps Donald Trump just short of that number at 50, maybe 100, maybe more. But the closer he is to that number, the better his case is that he should go into that convention as the presumptive nominee, and the better his case that on a second ballot he should be considered. I want to bring in quickly, as we wait Mr. Trump, Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, Monica Crowley, Fox News contributor. And let me ask you, Ben, what you think the stakes are now as Donald Trump has won New York.
You know, I think a lot of people expected Donald Trump to do well in his home state. I certainly expected him to do well myself, and I think that this night is going to be very good for him. But this does set up a situation where we're going to have to see how much momentum he can actually take out of this. You see the future of this map where you go into states like Indiana, states like California, where you essentially have 53 elections, and it's going to be very challenging for him.
Stand by. I'm going to get back to both of you as soon as he's finished. Stand by.
Yes.
Let's listen to Mr. Trump.
The people of New York, when they give us this kind of a vote, and it's just incredible. And I guess we're close to 70%, and we're going to end at a very high level. Problems like virtually every other state in the union. Our jobs are being sucked out of our states. They're being taken out of our country, and we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're going to stop it. Very importantly, and behind me I have to say, we have some of our great businessmen of the world. Carl Icahn is here someplace. Where's Carl? Howard Lorber, Ben LeBeau, the great Steve Roth. Steve's building a big building on Central Park South. It's a tremendous success. I said, Steve, congratulations on the building. He said, Donald, it's nothing compared to what's happening with you. Is that right, my man? So anyway, we're proud of him. But we have our great leaders, and it has been really something. It has been really something amazing. And believe me, we are going to use our great business people to negotiate unbelievable trade deals so we bring our jobs back and we don't let our companies go to Mexico and all of these other countries anymore. We're going to keep the jobs here. You're going to be very proud of this country very soon. We're going to build our military bigger, better, stronger than ever before. Nobody is going to mess with us. That I can tell you. We're going to take care of our vets. Our vets are great people, and we have forgotten our vets. Illegal immigrants are taken care of in many cases better than our vets. That's not going to happen anymore. That is not going to happen. We're getting rid of Obamacare. It's going to be repealed and replaced. It is a total disaster with premiums going up 35, 45, 55%. It's going to probably end of its own volition. We're getting rid of it. We're bringing Common Core. We're knocking it out. We're cutting it. It's going to be over, and we're bringing education locally. Local communities are going to take care of their educational needs, and people have been waiting for that for a long time. So with all of the things that have happened today, tonight, and over the week, I'll tell you what, this has been an amazing week. All over New York State, we went to Syracuse, we went to Albany, 20,000 people. I mean, on average, we'd have 15 to 20,000 people. We went to Rochester, we went to Bethpage, we went all over. And you know what? The people of this country and the people of this state truly are great and amazing people. We are going to be so strong again. We are going to be really, I mean, legitimately so great again. And I just can't wait. So, we don't have much of a race anymore based on what I'm seeing on television. Senator Cruz is just about mathematically eliminated. And we've won another state. As you know, we have won millions of more votes than Senator Cruz, millions and millions of more votes than Governor Kasich. We've won, and now, especially after tonight, close to 300 delegates more than Senator Cruz. We're really, really rocking. We expect we're going to have an amazing number of weeks because these are places and they're in trouble. They're in big trouble. When you look at Pennsylvania, when you look at Indiana, when you look at Maryland and Rhode Island and so many places, we have problems everywhere you look. We are going to solve those problems. And one of the big problems is the economy and jobs, and that is my wheelhouse. So, again, I want to thank everybody. It's really nice to win the delegates with the votes. You know, it's really nice. Nope. Nobody should be given delegates, which is a ticket to victory, and it's not a fair ticket. And even though we're leading by a lot and we can't be caught, it's impossible to catch us. Nobody should take delegates and claim victory unless they get those delegates with voters and voting. And that's what's going to happen. And you watch, because the people aren't going to stand for it. It's a crooked system. It's a system that's rigged, and we're going to go back to the old way. It's called you vote and you win. So we'll be going into the convention no matter what happens, and I think we're going to go in so strong. And over the next number of weeks, we just saw a poll come out of California, which is an unbelievable poll. But we're going to go into the convention, I think, as the winner. But nobody can take an election away with the way they're doing it in the Republican Party. And by the way, I am no fan of Bernie, but I've seen Bernie win, and then I watch, and they say he has no chance of winning. So they have their superdelegate. The Republican system is worse. So I want to just thank everybody. I have great admiration and praise for the city of New York and the state of New York. I can think of nowhere that I would rather have this victory. So we love you all. Have a great evening. We celebrate. And tomorrow morning, we go back to work. I'm flying tomorrow morning. To Indiana. I'm going to Pennsylvania. I will be all over. So we're going to celebrate for about 2 hours. Then early in the morning, I get up and we begin working again. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, New York. We love New York. We love New York. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Donald Trump speaking at Trump Tower, and just want to bring you this update, which happened during his remarks. Fox News is now ready to project that Hillary Clinton will beat Bernie Sanders in New York's Democratic presidential primary, based on the Fox News exit polls and early vote tallies. So she has pulled out a victory here tonight, Brett.
She has, and it was, nip and tuck there for a little while as you looked at the exit polls, but we're told by the decision desk as the raw vote totals started to come in, it's starting to separate, and they're confident they can make a call. We'll see what the final number is tonight, but Bernie Sanders can make a case that he has made it a race here in New York, where she served as U.S. Senator for 8 years.
The problem for the Democrats is it's not necessarily in their party's best interest for their race to go on longer. Even they have more unity than the Republicans do. These debates have gotten vicious between Bernie and Hillary, and he's taken the gloves off. I think it's finally dawned on him that he needs to go after her if he wants to seize this nomination. And so he's forcing her positioning to move in a way that might not advantage her in a general, and he's really going after her on the Wall Street stuff, which is he's trying to hang that albatross around her neck before she ever gets out of this race.
And it's had an effect. However, if you look at those exit polls tonight, Megan, one thing on the Democratic side is that 7 in 10 said they would vote for the other candidate if they won in the Democratic Party. That's not the same on the Republican side, according to the exit polls. So unity eventually will come, it seems like, a little bit easier for the Democrats.
All right, stand by, because we've got Ed Henry. He's our chief White House correspondent, and he is live at Clinton campaign headquarters tonight. Ed?
Well, Maggie, good to see you. This is obviously a big call by Fox News. I can tell you I've been at almost every one of the Clinton victory parties over the many primaries and caucuses, or at least primary nights. She's lost some of them, obviously. This is the most raucous one. This is her adopted home state of New York. As media results have been put on TV screens, they've been cheering, chanting, I'm with her. There's a band here, much more festive than some of the other scenes I've seen. As Brett said, the key question is going to be, what is the margin of victory? Some exit polls suggesting Clinton was only leading by about 4 points. Bernie Sanders, even in defeat, is going to try to spin this as beating expectations that she just barely won. We'll see what the final number is, but the very bottom line for Sanders is he's fallen behind enough on delegates that if he is losing tonight as we project, he's simply mathematically getting closer and closer to being eliminated, Megyn.
Ed Henry, thank you very much. Back to Clinton headquarters in a moment. I also want to tell you that right after the break, we'll bring back Monica Crowley and Ben Domenech. We're going to talk about what we just heard from Donald Trump. Very different sounding tonight. And Ted Cruz gave a speech earlier, also very different sounding in the messaging. These two men are starting to position themselves in a totally different way than we have seen before. What does it mean, and what will it do between now and June 7th, when the last votes will be cast in advance of that July convention? Don't go away. We heard from Senator Ted Cruz earlier tonight, and we also just heard from Donald Trump. And the messages from each candidate sounded very different than we've heard from them in the past. If you missed Senator Cruz, here's a bit of him now. Do we have it?
This generation needs to answer a new set of questions. Can we? Should we? Will we? Are we still those people? Those dreamers and doers? Are America's greatest generations in our past, or are our best days yet ahead? We must unite the Republican Party, because doing so is the first step towards uniting all Americans.
Unity, and speaking about how America is at a point of choosing. And you heard Donald Trump tonight sounding, you tell me, more presidential? Senator Cruz, not Lion Ted. Did you notice that? Back with us now, Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, and Monica Crowley, Fox News contributor and host of the Monica Crowley Show on radio. Monica, what do you think? I don't know if I've ever heard Donald Trump call Ted Cruz Senator Cruz.
Yeah, there was definitely a change in his tone and in his rhetoric tonight. I mean, this was classic Donald Trump in the sense that he's really in his element when he's the victor, as he was tonight. He also hit all of the themes that got him to this point, Megyn. He hit illegal immigration, the economy, jobs, repealing Obamacare, strengthening the military. These are the things that got him to be the Republican frontrunner. Discipline, right. And now he realizes that this campaign is in a new phase, and there is a natural maturation of both the candidate and his campaign that's going on here, with his hiring of very seasoned, experienced political operatives that know the process, delegate hunters like Paul Manafort, who know how to wrangle delegates and then protect them once they're in their camp. He's got a top-flight Republican election attorney now on board, who is going to be able to maneuver and manage the process should it go to a contested convention in July. So he understands now that, you know, this campaign just got really real. And if he wants to win, he's got to go along with, I think, a much more substantive and responsible tone, because now he underrands he's not
he's
just
already giving fewer interviews. We've seen fewer tweets from him.
Exactly.
He seems to be, you know, just more disciplined. I want to ask you, Ben, whether all of that will be enough to get him to 1237 by June 7th, because, you know, some of these analysts are saying you need a running start in these states.
That's the real problem for him, because he's so far behind the 8 ball. You know, you talk about adding these people, you know, Paul Manafort and others coming onto the team, but they're coming on fairly late in the game, in part because Trump was not expecting to have to fight this battle this way. He thought that he was going to be able to rack up victories as he was doing a month ago. Instead, he's had this past month where he's been struggling and been losing in a lot of the delegate level fights he didn't really think were going to matter. That's one of the reasons why just last week he was hiring a new state director for the state of California. It's going to be a challenge for him to get to that point. He said something in those remarks, though, as well, I think, that is maybe a little bit, shall we say, charitably inaccurate, which is that Ted Cruz is mathematically eliminated, something which I think I would just call a lie.
Why? Why do you have an issue with that?
The fact of the matter is that, as Donald Trump knows, the way for him to become the nominee of the Republican Party is simple. He has to win 1237. If he doesn't, that dramatically increases the likelihood that Ted Cruz could prevail.
But he's just talking about getting 1237, right? I mean, that is real, what he said. Ted Cruz's odds of actually achieving 1237 before we get to a convention are slim and none.
Sure, but there's a big difference between that and being mathematically eliminated from being the nominee of the Republican Party, which I think is what Ted Cruz is really fighting for and slogging for in that speech in Pennsylvania.
Well, that was another message we heard, Monica, in Donald Trump saying nobody should claim delegates unless they got those delegates through voting. That you shouldn't be able to claim delegates unless you got them through voting, because right now the system is set up such that you can get delegates even if it wasn't through voting.
Well, that's right. And this has been the process for the Republican Party for many, many years, Megan. This isn't something new that was just sprung this year on Donald Trump. But look, this has been his theme. His theme all along has been the American people, you are victims, right? You're victims of illegal immigration. You're victims of a bad economy. You're victims of poor leadership in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. You're victims of bad trade deals. And that was very powerful for him. And whether there's validity to his argument or not, it is resonating that now he's saying, look, I'm now one of you because I'm being victimized by this process. That's resonating with a lot of people. And so you saw it repeated again tonight. I believe he's going to carry this forward, but I also think he's understanding that he's not just going to be the spokesman for the Republican Party, but as he goes forward and as he continues to win, he's got to get serious about speaking for the country. And that's why you're seeing also the change in tone.
And also, Mr. Trump, speaking to what's happening on his team, Corey Lewandowski was reportedly demoted, and Paul Manafort stepping in as the campaign manager. According to some reports, Trump's saying this is a team of unity, but it is evolving. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Megan.
Well, let's now take a look at some of the states ahead with Larry Sabato, the director of the University of Virginia's Center for Politics. So, Larry, if Trump pulls out, 85 delegates possibly in New York tonight, how does it make his path look? Realistically, what are the odds of getting to 1237 by June 7th?
This was expected, Megan, and I don't think it changes the outlook, and the outlook is still murky. That is, Donald Trump is by no means assured of 1237, and it's going to come down, I think, to two big states that really matter. Indiana in early May, and then California on June 7th. And we can talk about the particulars if you want, but, every time there's a big victory, whether it's for Ted Cruz in Wisconsin or it's for Donald Trump tonight in New York, the candidate says, we've got Big Mo, we've got the big momentum. Well, really, it's not Big Mo and it's not Little Mo either. Every state matters, every delegate matters.
It's like FOMO. Look at that. Fear of missing out. Good to see you, Larry. Stand by. Sorry, it's tight segments tonight.
Thanks.
Stu Stevens is here as well. Stu, I want to get your thoughts on what we've seen tonight.
Listen, I think it's a big night for Donald Trump, because if he hadn't won, it would be a bad night for Donald Trump. But Larry's exactly right. This is about getting to 1237. I think that it would be a better shot for those who don't want Donald Trump if John Kasich would not compete in California, if John Kasich would not compete in Indiana, if he had let Cruz take those delegates. This is all about not getting to 1237 for Donald Trump. But, Trump is benefiting from that both of them staying in like that. But listen, I think the big winner tonight is Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton crushes Donald Trump in the general.
So she's won her home state tonight, and Bernie Sanders is feeling that. We'll be right back. Sean Hannity is up next, and then at 11 o'clock, Brett and I return for a special hour of coverage. Hope you join us then. Go to Facebook.com/The Kelly File in the meantime, and on Twitter @Megyn Kelly. Tell me what you think of tonight's results. See you in an hour. We heard from Senator Ted Cruz earlier tonight, and we also just heard from Donald Trump. And the messages from each candidate sounded very different than we've heard from them in the past. If you missed Senator Cruz, here's a bit of him now. Do we have it?
This generation needs to answer a new set of questions. Can we? Should we? Will we? Are we still those people? Those dreamers and doers? Are America's greatest generations in our past, or are our best days yet ahead? We must unite the Republican Party, because doing so is the first step towards uniting all Americans.
Unity, and speaking about how America is at a point of choosing. And you heard Donald Trump tonight sounding, you tell me, more presidential? Senator Cruz, not Lion Ted. Did you notice that? Back with us now, Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, and Monica Crowley, Fox News contributor and host of the Monica Crowley Show on radio. Monica, what do you think? I don't know if I've ever heard Donald Trump call Ted Cruz Senator Cruz.
Yeah, there was definitely a change in his tone and in his rhetoric tonight. I mean, this was classic Donald Trump in the sense that he's really in his element when he's the victor, as he was tonight. He also hit all of the themes that got him to this point, Megyn. He hit illegal immigration, the economy, jobs, repealing Obamacare, strengthening the military. These are the things that got him to be the Republican frontrunner. Discipline, right. And now he realizes that this campaign is in a new phase, and there is a natural maturation of both the candidate and his campaign that's going on here, with his hiring of very seasoned, experienced political operatives that know the process, delegate hunters like Paul Manafort, who know how to wrangle delegates and then protect them once they're in their camp. He's got a top-flight Republican election attorney now on board who is going to be able to maneuver and manage the process should it go to a contested convention in July. So he understands now that, you know, this campaign just got really real. And if he wants to win, he's got to go along with, I think, a much more substantive and responsible tone, because now he understands he's not
he's
just
already giving fewer interviews. We've seen fewer tweets from him. He seems to be, you know, just more disciplined. I want to ask you, Ben, whether all of that will be enough to get him to 1237 by June 7th, because, you know, some of these analysts are saying you need a running start in these states.
That's the real problem for him, because he's so far behind the eight ball. You know, you talk about adding these people, you know, Paul Manafort and others coming onto the team, but they're coming on fairly late in the game, in part because Trump was not expecting to have to fight this battle this way. He thought that he was going to be able to rack up victories as he was doing a month ago. Instead, he's had this past month where he's been struggling and been losing at a lot of the delegate level fights he didn't really think were going to matter. That's one of the reasons why just last week he was hiring a new state director for the state of California. It's going to be a challenge for him to get to that point. He said something in those remarks, though, as well, I think, that is maybe a little bit, shall we say, charitably inaccurate, which is that Ted Cruz is mathematically eliminated, something which I think I would just call a lie.
Why?
The fact of the matter is that, as Donald Trump knows, the way for him to become the nominee of the Republican Party is simple. He has to win 1237. If he doesn't, that dramatically increases the likelihood that Ted Cruz could prevail on a second ballot. But he's just talking about getting
1237, right? I mean, that is real, what he said. Ted Cruz's odds of actually achieving 1237 before we get to a convention are slim and none.
Sure, but there's a big difference between that and being mathematically eliminated from being the nominee of the Republican Party, which I think is what Ted Cruz is really fighting for and slogging for in that speech in Pennsylvania.
Well, that was another message we heard, Monica, in Donald Trump saying nobody should claim delegates unless they got those delegates through voting. That you shouldn't be able to claim delegates unless you got them through voting, because right now the system is set up such that you can get delegates even if it wasn't through voting.
Well, that's right. And this has been the process for the Republican Party for many, many years, Megyn. This isn't something new that was just sprung this year on Donald Trump. But look, this has been his theme. His theme all along has been the American people, you are victims, right? You're victims of illegal immigration. You're victims of a bad economy. You're victims of poor leadership in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. You're victims of bad trade deals. And that was very powerful for him. And whether there's validity to his argument or not, it is resonating that now he's saying, look, I'm now one of you because I'm being victimized by this process. That's resonating with a lot of people. And so you saw it repeated again tonight. I believe he's going to carry this forward, but I also think he's understanding that he's not just going to be the spokesman for the Republican Party, but as he goes forward and as he continues to win, he's got to get serious about speaking for the country. And that's why you're seeing also the change in tone.
And also, Mr. Trump, speaking to what's happening on his team. Corey Lewandowski was reportedly demoted, and Paul Manafort stepping in as the campaign manager. According to some reports, Trump's saying this is a team of unity, but it is evolving. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Megan.
Well, let's now take a look at some of the states ahead with Larry Sabato, the director of the University of Virginia's Center for Politics. So, Larry, if Trump pulls out, 85 delegates possibly in New York tonight, how does it make his path look? Realistically, what are the odds of getting to 1237 by June 7th?
This was expected, Megan, and I don't think it changes the outlook, and the outlook is still murky. That is, Donald Trump is by no means assured of 1237, and it's going to come down, I think, to two big states that really matter. Indiana in early May, and then California on June 7th. And we can talk about the particulars if you want, but, every time there's a big victory, whether it's for Ted Cruz in Wisconsin or it's for Donald Trump tonight in New York, the candidate says, we've got Big Mo, we've got the big momentum. Well, really, it's not Big Mo and it's not Little Mo either. Every state matters, every delegate matters.
It's like FOMO. Look at it. Fear of missing out. Good to see you, Larry. Stand by. Sorry, it's tight segments tonight.
Thanks.
Stu Stevens is here as well. Stu, I want to get your thoughts on what we've seen tonight.
Listen, I think it's a big night for Donald Trump, because if he hadn't won, it would be a bad night for Donald Trump. But Larry's exactly right. This is about getting to 1237. I think that it would be a better shot for those who don't want Donald Trump if John Kasich would not compete in California, if John Kasich would not compete in Indiana, if he had let Cruz take those delegates. This is all about not getting to 1237 for Donald Trump. But, Trump is benefiting from that both of them staying in like that. But listen, I think the big winner tonight is Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton crushes Donald Trump in the general.
So she's won her home state tonight, and Bernie Sanders is feeling that. We'll be right back. So Sean Hannity is up next, and then at 11 o'clock, Brett and I return for a special hour of coverage. Hope you join us then. Go to Facebook.com/The Kelly File in the meantime, and on Twitter @Megyn Kelly. Tell me what you think of tonight's results. See you in an hour.